Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this is the Tesla Model 3. Now, what you may not realize is I am just as much of a car guy as I am into technology, and I thought this was the best of both worlds combined into one. So I've been driving it for a couple days, and I wanted to give you the good and the bad after driving it for those couple of days, and just give you my first impressions. Now, the first positive thing is the design. It kind of grows on you, and while I still think the Model S is a little bit better looking, the Model 3 is quite good, especially the front 3/4 of it. The back is a little bit what I'm not so crazy about. Now, the next positive thing is the handling. Let me go ahead and show you what that's like, and then we'll talk about Autopilot next. So let me move along here. And this is a particularly curvy road, and it has pretty good elevation where I live too. So this car handles incredibly well because all of the weight is really down low. And it is a heavy car, but let's go ahead and we're doing 30 miles per hour. It's 45 through here. And the handling is really great, as is how quiet it is. It's pretty quiet. You pretty much only hear the road noise from the tires and the wind going over the mirrors. But you'll see here, let me accelerate. I'll slow down and show you the acceleration, because that's what's probably the most impressive thing. There's torque from 0 RPM. So if I stop here and then just punch it, it will pin you in the seat like a muscle car, and it's incredibly quick and very fun. Anyone I've given a ride to in this has thought that's incredible, and you'll see we're doing 25. If I punch it again, that torque is just there all of the time, and that's what makes this car so more modern feeling. In fact, it's what I would say is the equivalent of when an iPhone came out and how different that was than the previous versions of smartphones or flip phones. It's that big of a jump, but it's still in its infancy. Now, the next positive thing is Autopilot. Autopilot is not 100% there. There's been quite a few videos about that, but on a curvy road like this, it's pretty impressive. So let me turn it on. You turn it on by pushing down this stalk twice. And I can set the speed with this little dial here. We'll set it for 31 miles per hour. This is really curvy. This is a 25 mile per hour curve, and you'll see how it handles it. Now, you do have to touch the steering wheel every 15 seconds or so. It's not quite fully autonomous yet, and it does make mistakes, so I have to monitor it, but it really eases driving, especially in traffic. That's where that really shines. So you'll see it's pretty curvy up front here. Now, this is a pretty odd sensation of driving, and you'll see it says apply light force. It'll turn blue. I apply a light force and it works. Now, going up this hill is where it might be a little bit scary because it may not see the lines, and you'll see it went out of the lines slightly, and I had to grab the wheel. And that's where it's not perfect, because when you come up over that hill, it's not seeing those lines. But watch as I drive through this, how it corners. So this is a fun car to drive and a fast car, and you have to be careful because it's so quick. Now, the next thing is build quality. Build quality is way better than I've heard others say. In fact, I checked it out, and the lines on the car are straight. It's quiet, and it takes a lot to actually make a car this quiet all of the time. The electric motors being as quiet as they are, you really can hear everything going on in the car. So it's more quiet, and that little rattling you might hear is actually the camera mount. It's not the car itself. So it's really impressive when you're driving this along how quiet it actually is. So that part's nice. The interior is also built pretty well. The sparseness of it makes it feel like you're not getting as much for your money, but it's super clean. The steering wheel feels really good. It's a nice thickness, and all of the materials, including the touchscreen, feel very high quality. The seats look like they're built really well. They seem like they'll last the test of time, but we'll see over the next few years. But overall, I think it's pretty well built compared to other cars I've tried as well, including Mercedes and BMW and things like that. Now, the next positive thing is I can drive this across country, regardless of what some people may think. You actually can drive this anywhere you'd like. So you just go to navigate on the touchscreen. Maybe we want to go to Austin, Texas. We'll wait for it to load. All of those red dots are the superchargers. So there's a lot of superchargers across the country. Now, it may take you longer to get there than if you were in a gas-powered car, but we'll wait for it to load. It uses LTE, so it has that.
Now
and then
turn left onto Pole Branch Road.
And you'll see here's all the superchargers. Now, in this case, we'll have to charge for 50 minutes, 1 hour, 50 minutes. So each time we have to stop 50 minutes to 1 hour. Now, some trips I've plotted, you only have to stop for an hour once, and then you can drive, and the next stop will be about 20 minutes. So it just depends where you're going. But in this case, that's what you have to stop every time to go to, and that will get you there. Of course, you'll be able to get out, get maybe something to eat, take a break, but it is a little bit longer than you would have in a regular car. But you definitely can go anywhere you want, and that's a major positive for Tesla in particular, because there's no one else you can do that with. Now, the next positive is this touchscreen interface. It takes a little bit to get used to, but if you're used to an iPhone or an iPad, this is phenomenal. It's super responsive. It's really fast, and if you want to search for navigation or whatever, it's using Google Maps, and then it connects to your phone with Bluetooth. And that's not the best way, in my opinion. I'd rather have a wired connection for better sound quality, but I love this touchscreen interface, especially the fans. If you want to adjust the fans in and out, you can shoot the air through the steering wheel at your face. We'll keep that off for now. And it's just really nice. And then let me turn this back off. You'll see how responsive it is. If I want to turn the wipers on, I can turn them on like that, or turn them to auto. We can swipe here, see our tire pressure. The whole interface is really good. It does take a little bit of getting used to. This is the rear camera. We have electricity that we've used, the charge, and everything else. And this will do about 310 miles. It is the long range, and that's without climate control on or on very high, and at a normal cruising speed on the highway. But everything as far as the touch controls, the heated seats, everything else is really simple and straightforward, and it works really well. You even have a web browser here. You can see there's my web page, and it's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with this, and it's a great clean interface. Also, you control everything with these two knobs here. You want to turn up the radio, you turn it up with the left knob. You want to adjust speed and distance in cruise control, you use the right knob. And everything feels pretty high quality. Now, the next positive is there's almost no maintenance when it comes to an electric car. There's really not a whole lot to do. You change brakes and tires. So whenever your tires wear out, you change those. Whenever the brakes wear out, which is usually 100,000 miles or more, just like a hybrid, my hybrid that I've had before lasted 100,000 miles on one pair of brake pads. Beyond that, up to 180,000 miles in some fleet vehicles that are using Teslas. So that's really, really impressive and very minimal cost. Of course, the car costs a lot more up front. And then you also have environmental benefits, however you view that. I didn't try to look at one of these because of environmental reasons. I just see that as a side benefit. Now, of course, there are other things as far as creating the car that may not be as good for the environment. But you don't have the smog or anything like that. So it's just nice and quiet. And that's something I like a lot about this vehicle. Now let's move on to the negatives. The first one I can think of is price. This is a very expensive car. It's supposed to be the inexpensive model, and it's just not there yet. Configured like this one is, a dual motor long range. This is the cheapest when it comes to paint and tires. So with Autopilot, you're about $55,000 to $57,000 or so, depending on how you configure it, up to $70,000 for the performance model. And that's not an inexpensive vehicle. Now, if this was $40,000 to $45,000, I would say this is really what it should be and what it feels like when I'm driving it. It feels more like a $40,000 to $50,000 car as opposed to a $50,000 to $70,000 car. And that may or may not be important to you depending on how much money you actually have. So that's something to consider, of course. The next negative or bad thing about this car is quality. Now, for some, this isn't a concern because the newer cars seem to be pretty high quality, but some of the older ones, there were panel gap issues and misalignments and things, and Tesla has gone out of their way pretty much to fix that for the majority of people. However, for a lot of people, for a car this expensive, that's a big concern. So the next thing that's negative for me is the software. Now, I love the software interface of this. I think it's great, and it's the best in any car I've ever used. However, it was a little bit scary for me when I was driving it yesterday. I was driving on the highway in a little bit of rain. It wasn't too bad. And the software that controls the windshield wipers is terrible. It works okay sometimes when it's in auto, and then other times it doesn't work at all. It's really strange how it works. But I was driving in Autopilot at 70 miles per hour on the highway, which is the speed limit, and all of a sudden it gave me 5 different errors. Regenerative braking shut off, which one thing that was pretty interesting is this is a heavy car, and now that you're not relying on regenerative braking, it becomes very heavy, and you can feel that with the brake pedal. So I don't know what the performance model is like, but the dual motor, this thing felt like it wouldn't stop very well because it's so heavy. So that's something to note. But also, there were 4 more errors on top of that with autopilot and emergency braking and all these different systems. Cruise control wouldn't work. And so I got to a supercharger, which is where I was headed. Got to the supercharger and rebooted the computer. And you do that by holding the 2 buttons on the steering wheel down. The computer reboots, and then most of the systems were working fine. But since that happened, I decided to call Tesla since I was waiting for the supercharger just to see what was going on. And they didn't see a problem, but they did see the errors. And the reboot, they had me power down the car, reboot it again, and it fixed the problem. So it's kind of like a laptop or an iPhone or one of those things, and it gets a little bit scary if that happens. Now, it didn't affect drivability on the highway. I could drive it like any other car, but all of those systems went away all of a sudden. So it's just something to keep in mind, and they look at that data, and they actually told me they look at that data, and they get all of that data, they store it for 2 weeks and take any bug reports and then get rid of it and try and improve the cars. So they're trying to make them autonomous, but we're a little ways from that, especially if your car has any of those errors happen. They didn't find any problems with the sensors or anything, and said if it happened again, call them and maybe bring it in. So this car is really new. It's less than a month old and has a little over 1,000 miles on it. So it's just something to note. Now, the final negative I have has to do with the superchargers. Now, I said this was a positive before, and my reasoning has to do with the amount of time it takes to charge. 20 to 30 minutes to me is fine, but an hour to an hour and 10 minutes is not, especially if you have little kids with you along the way. So it may be okay for some people. Your average stop is anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Sometimes 30 minutes. A lot of people think they're stopping for 10 minutes and it ends up taking 20 minutes or longer. So 20 to 30 minutes would be okay. And now BMW says they have a technology that will charge 3 times faster than Tesla. The problem is they don't have a supercharger network across the United States. So I really wish they'd all partner, figure that out, and just put them all over the place, and you'd solve that problem. And if it really is 3 times faster, well, that solves the problem right there. So hopefully we see all of these advances coming up in the future. We'll see a lot more electric cars. And overall, I think this is a great piece of technology. Now, the real question is, would I buy one? I'm not sure yet. In fact, I like the Model S better as far as its looks, but the technology is better in this car. So it's kind of up in the air, and they're still really expensive. So it's still up in the air for me personally. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about them in the comments below. Would you like to see more car videos? Since that's something I'm actually really passionate about, and I have been into cars since as long as I have been into technology. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, though, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.